Hey Gators, and welcome to Module 11, Terrorism in Europe Part 2. Wow, where's the semester gone? We only have a few modules left, and it's exciting to see how much we've done, and I hope you've been able to learn a lot and think about all these different things we're doing. So we're going to go a little bit deeper into what's going on in Europe, and again, focus primarily on Western Europe, although I don't want to ignore some of the attacks in Eastern Europe as well. But we're going to talk about the radicalization approach specifically in this module. And then we're going to do a really cool activity, so no quiz, but I'll talk about that in just a moment. So in Western Europe, where the number of attacks increased slightly in 2017, the victims dropped by 65%. So that was a very, very big success, and notably so, because it means we saw a little bit of an uptick in attacks, but the attacks aren't going very well. They're not being fully carried out to ensue high casualties, injuries, and mayhem. And so it's suggested that it may be matters of policing and counterintelligence to try to eliminate the attack from being pulled off, or reroute the target, or push it into places that are not as high profile with not as many people. And again, we never want to see anyone injured or killed from terrorism, but if we can eliminate the death toll, that's a success. The number of failed, foiled, and successful terrorist attacks in Europe by Islamic extremists surged 725% between 2007 and 2017. So I bring up this statistic because it shows you terrorism is still very alive and well, and Bruce Hoffman also highlighted that in his media lecture when he talked about social media and outreach and training and cells and people still coordinating attacks. Nearly 3/4 of terrorist plotters will carry out or have their plans thwarted within 2 years of arrival in Europe. Again, a very big success in the case of Europe and its campaign to thwart terrorism. Radicalization of plotters generally occurred abroad, although in the most recent plots, more commonly within Europe itself, again, in these little cells, and we've seen many of them spring up in Belgium. Europe's response to migration flows and people moving in and out of the country has been largely inadequate and inadvertently increased the terrorist threat dramatically. But again, we can't really blame Europe because they were next door to Syria and they experienced a lot of Syrian refugees, and it was overwhelming for any one country to absorb people in any fashion. And so you can imagine what it might mean to us in the United States to suddenly have millions and millions of people coming in seeking refugee status. It can overwhelm a system, certainly. So European leaders have to acknowledge the mistakes of the past and really control the refugee flow very strictly in the future. And so this is a discussion that really says, hey, monitoring and screening is more important than ever, and we have that same challenge in the United States as well. Most asylum seekers heading to Europe do not pose a terrorist threat, although they can go under the guise of an asylum seeker. Furthermore, most plots in Europe do not involve refugees or asylum seekers. So it's not that these migrants are the problem, it's that they create problems that kind of can overwhelm systems where terrorist issues can sneak through them. So they're not the problem in and of itself. It's that they can be very distracting and overwhelming for other issues to arise. None of this makes European countries' handling of migration flows any less catastrophic. It's been a crazy, crazy time in European history. Nor does it alter the fact that the terrorist threat in Europe has increased between 2001 and 2016, and there's no debating that. Organizing the movement and inflows of people across borders is just simply one of the many approaches to ensure proper resources and security protocols are met. So it's not to say that we're going to start a migration debate fight here. It's just to say this is one of the many things we have to think about when we think about security and we think about people moving from countries that have had a history of threat. So though there was a surge in terrorist attacks in Europe in recent years, most attacks actually still occur in the Middle East and Africa. So I don't want you to think, just because we're studying this, that all problems are in Europe. No, absolutely not. And those regions also saw a big decline in 2017. But essentially, when we track country to country attacks in regions of the world, The bigger question is whether we can know that terrorism is actually declining, or is it just changing? And that's what the research is largely centered on. So again, this module just highlights some of the approaches that have been successful, the approaches that are still quite challenging, dealing with migration, dealing with threat, and all the political backlash that comes with that. You can't please everybody when it comes to how you appropriate resources and monitor migration. It's a very challenging situation for everyone to be in, but this is something that we want to mention in this module. So we're actually going to be identifying counterterrorism approaches by law enforcement in Europe, looking at how the Euro borders are controlled. I've actually been to Europe 2 times. The first time was with students, and the borders got shut down because I was there during the Paris attacks in 2015. And that was quite challenging. And I've learned kind of how borders will open and close, and it happens much more commonly there, obviously, than the United States. And then I also want to engage you in some kind of an analytical critique of approaches to counterterrorism that have been used in both the UK and the United States, and that's your assignment for the week. So for your Think About It question, it's well documented that Brussels is a counterpoint for organizing European terrorist attacks in London, Madrid, and Paris. What strategies should we use for eliminating this as an organizing base for terrorists? What do we do about Brussels? What do we do about Belgium? That's kind of the million-dollar question right now. And we've seen some materials already in class and films that have discussed this quite a bit. But I kind of want to ask you that question to say, given all of that, what do you think the best next move is? For your readings, it's not quite as heavy this week. It's a journal article. So we're going to look at one approach to re-socialization of people who were previously quite radicalized. And it says de-radicalization and counter-radicalization, tools in combating violent extremism, or is it harmful methods of subjugation? So this looks at the controversy of de-radicalization programs, which are very active in Europe right now, and gives us some of the current research on this issue. For your videos, you have obviously the overview of the module. You have a lecture that talks about terrorism in Europe Part 2 and some of my research in the UK. And then we are going to be looking at some news clips of the London 7/7 bombings that happened in 2005, as well as terror in Brussels, to help answer that Think About It question. Finally, for activities, again, no quiz, but a really fun and creative assignment. I want to see you flex your muscles in analysis. And essentially, you're going to be comparing 2 media campaigns, Run, Hide, Tell, or Run, Hide, Fight. So Run, Hide, Tell is the UK's counterterrorism, how to respond to an active shooter campaign. Run, Hide, Fight is the United States version of the same threat. So the advice is either Run, Hide, Tell, or Run, Hide, Fight. They share a broadly similar script, and I detail some of that script here that you'll want to read through as you prepare your assignment. And here you have the UK film that you get to watch. It's just a couple of minutes. And the US film you get to watch, again, a couple of minutes. And you're going to see some very common similarities, and you're going to see some differences. And so we're going to kind of compare and contrast the two. Okay? And I have some details here that you'll, again, want to look through to prepare. So really, in your assignment at the bottom, I just want to clarify, compare and contrast the United States Run, Hide, Fight active shooter survival media campaign versus the United Kingdom's Run, Hide, Tell active shooter survival media campaign. And then essentially you're going to be answering these questions. Write a 1 to 2 page essay focusing on the following questions. What are the risks and benefits of the UK campaign versus the US campaign? There are risks and benefits to both. I don't think any one is better than the other. I think they're just different, and they also illustrate different cultures. But I want you to kind of take a look for yourself and see what you decide. Your opinion is not wrong. I actively want to hear it. And then the question, which film do you think provides the best preparation for surviving an active shooter event? That's a tougher one to answer because then you have to choose. And you could choose either. Again, no right or wrong answer here. Defend your answer using concepts and materials like terror in Europe that we have learned throughout the class. Please cite these materials as you reference them in your essay. And that's what I'm going to be looking for as far as the grading rubric. I want to make sure you write extensively on this, filling up that page space, answering the questions directly, using those concepts and materials. defending your position and how strong your defense is, how strong your argument is. You can use outside sources if you would like, but they need to be peer reviewed in order to use them. And this is not required, but some people like to pull in some other stuff too, and that's fine. But you don't have to do that. And again, you'll submit your essay at that time. So this should be kind of fun and different, and a little bit of a break from the quizzes, and hopefully pull your grade up a little bit if you've struggled with the quizzes in the past. So I like to kind of do different types of assessments to determine your mastery. So hopefully this helps for the week, and we'll see you in Module 11.